Welcome to the Deep Dive Books channel, where we hope you find something valuable every day.
We continue exploring Nexus by Yuval Noah Harari. This is the second part of our interpretation. Harari's perspective of information as an output of order takes us on an epic journey from history to the future. In the next few sessions, we will review humanity's political organization. There's an old Chinese saying, "The most important matters for a state are rituals and military campaigns." Those unfamiliar with politics may think rituals are merely ceremonial and that military actions matter only during wartime. However, reading Harari's work reveals the essence. Rituals sustain cohesion and identity through shared stories, while military campaigns symbolize the exercise of power. In Harari's words, one represents myths, and the other, bureaucracy. Today, let's discuss how these two elements produce order. Harari starts with a Soviet story. Stalin's son Vasily took advantage of his father's name to gain personal benefits. Stalin scolded him. Vasily responded, "But I am Stalin too." Stalin replied, "You are not Stalin. In fact, even I am not Stalin. Stalin is the person, printed in newspapers and portraits. Stalin is the Soviet regime." In modern terms, Stalin was saying, he was merely a personified representation of the Soviet system. Now consider contemporary America. One major argument from Trump supporters is that Trump stands against the deep state, a shadowy group supposedly controlling the country's real power, while the president is just a figurehead. What's worth noting is that fear of the deep state and the glorification of leaders are two sides of the same coin. Mirror image emotions. Mythical stories inspire awe, just as bureaucratic systems evoke fear. Yet both are essential for maintaining complex societies. Harari divides reality into three layers. 1. Objective reality. The physical world. Plants, stones, earth, and sky. These exist independently of human perception. 2. Subjective reality. Our inner experiences. Love, hatred, joy, and sorrow, which are real yet intangible. 3. Intersubjective reality. Shared beliefs that exist within human connections. For example, nation-states are intersubjective realities. Does Palestine exist as a nation? It depends on whether people acknowledge its existence. The US and Cameroon do not recognize Palestine as a state, while Iran and Algeria do not acknowledge Israel. Meanwhile, countries like China and Brazil recognize both Israel and Palestine. A nation's existence cannot be scientifically proven. It requires collective agreement. In Sapiens, Harari explained that nations, corporations, currencies, laws, and deities are shared imaginations. Fictional constructs. Why do we accept a piece of paper as money? Why uphold constitutional dignity? Why is Mazu worshipped by people in Fujian? Because we believe in them. Ownership is another intersubjective reality. How can you claim a piece of land as yours? As a child might say, it doesn't answer when you call it, so how is it yours? In the past, ownership depended on neighbors' acknowledgement. Today, ownership is recorded in legal documents. Without this shared reality, property disputes would be endless. Intersubjective reality isn't objective, but it is through this shared construct that information provides order. Take the US development of the atomic bomb. It was Oppenheimer and his team of physicists who conducted the research. But can we say Oppenheimer made the bomb? Of course not. While scientists provided knowledge, building the bomb involved hundreds of thousands of workers and millions in indirect support. A larger force was needed to organize all these people. This is why Oppenheimer obeyed the president, not the other way around. Scientists and intellectuals provide truth, but do not produce order, which is why they have less societal status than politicians or entrepreneurs. As Bertrand Russell said, "I would never die for my beliefs, because I might be wrong." Commitment to truth limits one's influence. To establish order, people must share a belief in a supreme intersubjective reality. For modern nations, this is the Constitution. For pre-modern states, it was religion or a monarch. A story capable of producing order often contains fiction. Fiction is simpler and more inspiring. Here, I must commend Harari. He is an Israeli scholar, highly respected even by Netanyahu, yet he has never shown favoritism toward the Israeli government. In his book, Harari offers this analogy. Imagine an Israeli politician delivering a campaign speech about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Do you think they would objectively discuss the suffering Israel has caused the Palestinian people? Of course not. Politicians avoid unpleasant complexities and focus on Israel's spirit of struggle. They glorify the past, promise a bright future, and ask for votes now. This isn't unique to politics. It's the basic rule of creating intersubjective reality. For example, many brands, especially beverages, associate themselves with sports, health, and positive emotions, but aren't they just something to drink? Similarly, actors and influencers project images for marketing purposes. They connect with thousands of people on screen, but in real life, they might be just like any other person. Religion takes this to another level. Scholars argue that the historical Jesus was an ordinary Jewish preacher traveling between villages with a small following. After his execution by the Romans, his disciples transformed his story, projecting their emotions and aspirations onto him. They created a divine image, a universal father figure. This narrative united strangers as a family-like community. Pure storytelling has this power. Truth lacks such influence. While people claim to value truth, they often only accept it when it's beautified. To make people believe, you must craft fiction. But fiction has its costs. It's hard to change. Some religious believers, for example, insist every word of the Quran is divine law, making adaptation to modernity difficult. A more flexible approach is to openly acknowledge that intersubjective realities are human creations. For example, the U.S. Constitution isn't claimed to be divine, but includes mechanisms for amendment. It admits potential flaws and allows for future adjustments. However, honesty has its price. It's harder to inspire belief. Throughout history, people have trusted gods more than humans. Ancient rulers claimed their laws came from the heavens, forbidding human debate. The U.S. Constitution, only 2 centuries old, is an exception. This presents a historical and future dilemma. Establishing order requires sacrificing truth, but ignoring truth hampers adaptability. Some nations still ban the teaching of evolution. If ignorance is a source of power, how far can such nations go? History shows that more information doesn't necessarily make people wiser. Humanity constantly seeks a balance between truth and order. Intersubjective reality alone isn't enough for efficient societal function. We also need individuals to execute beliefs and systems to organize resources. This is where bureaucracy comes in. Your ID card, diploma, bank statement, property deed, and employment records aren't just pieces of paper. They represent society's acknowledgement of your identity, achievements, and rights. These documents are reality. Bureaucracies demand you prove your mother is your mother through documentation. Documents solve problems that storytelling cannot. While tales of heroism and love are memorable, data like land ownership, taxes, and bank balances require written records. The term bureaucracy literally means rule by desk. Civil servants at their desks manage society through files and drawers. To be efficient, documents must be categorized, which inevitably distorts reality. Bureaucrats manage by classifying and organizing. Governments divide into departments, countries into provinces, universities into faculties. Yet, as the ugly duckling principle suggests, all classifications are subjective. In universities, there are departments for applied mathematics, statistics, and finance, but addressing financial risk often requires knowledge from all 3 fields. So, which department should handle it? Similarly, one animal is classified as endangered and must be protected, while another isn't and can be hunted. Even though the 2 species have no fundamental differences, and their populations aren't drastically different. How can the classification made by a low-level official determine their fate? Everyday bureaucracy imposes similar constraints. Perhaps your grandparents belong to 4 different ethnic groups, yet you must pick one for a form. People adapt to forms, not the other way around. James C. Scott's Seeing Like a State explores how bureaucratic systems distort reality, often expanding government power. For instance, land ownership once depended on local consensus. With written records, ownership became absolute, allowing central governments to exert direct control over local affairs. On one hand, the government can use the numbers on documents to collect taxes, draft soldiers, and manage society in an organized and efficient manner. On the other hand, the bureaucratic system, with its numerous paperwork, classifications, and procedural steps, makes it increasingly difficult for ordinary people to understand how the government operates. This is why people fear bureaucracy and imagine deep states manipulating power. Think about it. Bureaucrats aren't geniuses or heroes. They simply know the system's paperwork. Yet they achieve what others cannot, often in obscurity. Many wonder, where does tax money go? Why is one neighborhood demolished, while another is spared? Are secret deals involved? Lack of understanding breeds fear, and fear fuels conspiracy theories. Bureaucracy is indispensable for public services, but it inherently distorts reality. Myths fabricate reality, while bureaucracies distort it. Thus, any intelligent person will deconstruct these systems, rather than worship them. In 1930, the 51-year-old Einstein wrote in his essay, My Worldview. He who joyfully marches in rank and file, has already earned my contempt. He has been given a large brain, by mistake, since for him the spinal cord would suffice. Einstein's critique is valid. Yet, organizing people to efficiently run a society demands these systems. Some fabrications are deliberate deceptions, like the rallying cry in Stephen Chow's films. Restore the Ming Dynasty is merely a slogan with hypnotic intent. But I must say, some fictions are absolutely necessary and well-intentioned. No matter how smart you are, you must respect them. For example, money and laws. As Harari puts it, constitutions are also fictional constructs. After all, there are no physical laws dictating that humans must live in a certain way. Confucius said, only the wisest and the most foolish remain unchanged. However, this doesn't mean that fiction and distortion should remain unchanged forever. To maintain the balance between truth and order, you need mechanisms for correction. Let's discuss this further in the next session. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
If you feel there is value in this, please like, subscribe to this channel, and leave your thoughts or suggestions in the comments section. Let's grow together and read more good books.